Good evening, everybody. My name is Jerry Pearce. I'm Chair of the Planning Committee. Welcome to the Planning Control Committee, the first one of the new municipal year, 22nd of May 2025. Welcome to Councillor Evans on the committee. Welcome back. Welcome back. We shall start with any apologies. I believe we have Councillor Holmes. I think he's apologised, yes. Anyone heard from Councillor Rawson? We'll keep it open and, as well for Morgan McGeehan as well, yeah. Okay, no problem at all. Can we have some quiet, please, in the public gallery, please? Item 2, late items. There are none. Item 3, declarations of interest. There are none. Item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of April 2025. Thank you very much, Councillor Bolton. That is passed through as noted. Item 5, minutes of the meeting of the Conservation and Heritage Advisory Committee. Again, thank you, Councillor Bolton. Oh, you want to speak, do you? Oh, no. Thank you, no problem.
Yes, I was perusing my agenda before coming out this afternoon, and I'd like to comment on the George Rennie Heritage Awards. I think I did pose a question a couple of meetings ago about what the situation was. It's on the bottom of page 4. If we look at the lists, the standing order extension, the pepper pot, I think that's supposed to be Towers, isn't it, at DRI? The moving of the Queen Victoria statue and repairs of listed walls. I just wanted to know where that was, because I couldn't off the top of my head think.
Also same locations, Councillor Bolton.
And 20 Duffield Road, what's the significance of that?
I'll have to come back to you on that, Councillor Bolton.
I didn't know.
Not sure.
I assume it's the city end, but I wasn't sure what 20 Duffield Road was. Okay, thank you for that. Just to prove I do read the minutes.
We threw that one in for you, Sarah. That's what it was. Sarah, can you speak?
Sorry.
Thank you very much. Item 6, appeal decisions. Over to you, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. We've got 3 decisions in the report. First one was a boundary fence at Sinfin Lane. The inspector agreed with us that it had an adverse impact on the character of the area, so it's in situ. We'll be writing to the owners about that boundary treatment. Second item, a large dormer also in situ at 21 Peach Street. The same inspector also agreed with our position about impact on character, and so we'll be writing to the householder there also. And then a proposal at 423 Bolton Lane, a forward projecting garage in the front garden. And very briefly, on a very brief decision letter, the inspector agreed with us again. So 3 good decisions there, Chair. And also, we did receive at the Friday of last week the decision into the Royal Hill Farm housing scheme, which was obviously a public inquiry back in April that Councillor Holmes represented committee to defend the appeal. It's a very good inspector's decision letter. Whilst the appeal is allowed, he does go into quite a lot of detail about the importance of green wedges, their consistency or their part consistency with the framework, and he talks about how we should be determining the presumption in favour of sustainable development when we don't have a 5-year housing land supply, also known as the tilted balance, and what we should be doing in terms of our decision-making responsibilities. So it's a very useful read. I'll make sure everybody gets a copy of it. There was also a separate costs application made at the inquiry by the appellant's team, and that was refused. The inspector said that whilst the appeal was allowed, that unreasonable behaviour hadn't occurred. So that's also worth a read, but I shall pass those on. It is, yeah, as I say, well written. The inspector's obviously taken time. He's been to site 3 times as well to look at things like traffic conditions and points that people raised at the inquiry. So I will ping them your way. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ian. Agenda item 7, development control performance. Short UK.
Sorry, Chair, I think it's an important point that Ian's just outlined to us. As well as going through Appendix 1 of the document, I think it is important regarding the site in Spondon that we're all well known about. And I think actually that decision was inevitable, but we need to learn from that. Might I suggest that we all have the details and perhaps the training session at a future, as we have had this evening, an hour before committee. I think it would be useful if we could all attend as much as possible and discuss the contents. I don't think it's any good just reading it at home. I think we need to sit round the table and actually digest, because obviously it'll have implications on other applications we've got to deal with in the forthcoming session. So I think it's a really important learning curve that we all need to digest and learn from.
Agreed and noted. Thank you.
Just one thing, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bolton. Our barrister did suggest that he would be prepared to come along and do a session, so I shall defer to, I'll speak to Chair about it and we'll set something up. Yeah, thank you for that.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Ian. Item 7, Development Control Performance, Quarter 4. Ian, is that yours again?
Yeah, thank you. Nothing to add, Chair. I'll take any questions if anybody's got any. Thank you.
Councillor Bolton.
Just to prove I've read my papers. I was interested to know on page 2, on the list under 4.2, what a public service infrastructure is.
They are now a specific project, something like a school building, and they now have 10-week determination periods. They've been in effect for a couple of years, but they are specifically categorised now, and we've had a few. We've had buildings at the hospital, Peartree Infant School recently, Beckett Primary School recently, so we have to work to that. And if we do go over the 10 weeks, which we invariably do because in normally issues like biodiversity net gain that need resolving, we have to get an extension of time, but it's a 10-week period, not an 8-week or a 13-week, it's a 10-weeker, so the government were just keen to get those applications through in a fairly swift time frame. So that's what they are, Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair. And if you'd allow me, on page 5, the top, 11.1, Health and Safety, I think it's important that councillors appreciate the work that our officers and the stress our officers may be under. And I'm pleased to see that it is actually written in the report that the new legislation does have impact on the morale of the team, and it's something that's monitored, because I think we ought to, obviously mindful as an authority, as I think we are, but I think it needs to be highlighted regarding the planning team, especially the planning enforcement team, who I know deal with a lot of hassle out in the community regarding allegedly unauthorised buildings. And I think it's nice to see that, we do care about our workforce and that it's important to us, because these targets and the figures that we have before us just shows how much the team do and the pressure that they're under. And I think we ought to say congratulations to the whole department and the team, because what they're doing, these statistics show that we have got an excellent team in Derby. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Totally agree with that as well. So, yes. Item 8, applications to be considered. With just as a matter of point, we've altered the order around slightly. So item 8.1 will go first, and then 8.3 will go second, and then we'll follow on from there. So item 8.1, which is 28 Marqueton Street, and that is Sarah John.
Thank you, Chair. 28 Marqueton Street is an end terrace dwelling that stands in the Little Chester Conservation Area and buffer zone of the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site. The Article 4 control in houses in multiple occupation is now in effect in this area of the city, and planning permission is sought to change the use of the dwelling to a 5-bed house in multiple occupation. During the life of the application, the proposals have been revised, and a dormer in the rear roof slope and roof light in the front roof slope, which were identified as harmful by the Conservation Officer, have been removed from the scheme. These were welcome revisions, and there are no outstanding objections to the proposal on heritage grounds. The amendments made to the proposal also reduce the number of proposed bedrooms from 6 to 5. As is outlined in the report, internal spaces within all 5 bedrooms, along with the shared kitchen dining space, are considered to be of an acceptable standard, and the City Council's Housing Standards team have confirmed that the layout meets with their space standards for one-person bedrooms. The property has a fair-sized rear garden that would provide an acceptable amount of outdoor space for the occupiers, along with adequate space for bin and cycle storage, the details of which are proposed to be secured by planning condition. In reaching a judgment on the acceptability of the proposal, consideration has to be given to how much extra impact the additional occupiers would make, and whether this would result in harm for the character of the area and the amenities of neighbouring occupiers. This 2-bedroom dwelling would be occupied by a family of 4, and it is concluded that levels of noise and disturbance and demands for parking cannot be argued as being appreciably greater so as to be injurious to amenity. Highways colleagues have advised on residential car parking research that indicates car ownership for a house in multiple occupation would equate to 2 vehicles when 6 bedrooms are proposed. They note that this figure is not dissimilar to the vehicle generation anticipated from the current use of the property as a 2-bedroom dwelling, and therefore parking demands does not give a basis on which it is considered that planning permission can be refused. The application has generated 46 individual objections and objections from all 3 ward councillors, and the issues raised are outlined in section 4 of the report. While the application has clearly generated local concern, we do not have any specific local plan or national planning policies that prevents the loss of the family home. There is also a clear lack of evidence to suggest that there is an overconcentration of HMOs in this area. There are no overriding heritage or amenity impacts, highway safety or flood risk issues that provide a strong reason for refusing planning permission, and therefore a recommendation is made for permission to be granted subject to the conditions outlined in the report. And Chair, I understand we have 4 speakers on this item this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So we'll have first Mr. Ranjit Sira. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Sorry, Chair. It's usual for the objectors at every meeting I've been to previously to state their case first, and then the applicant states their case. I'm happy to go first if you want, but I'm just reminding ourselves that in any situation, every councillor I go to planning committee, that's the order it's done in. But I'll seek your advice on that.
Our procedure for public speaking has the applicant going first, and we've had that for quite some time at Derby City Council. Okay.
Thank you for presenting this case, and thank you, Sarah, for putting the report together. This application was submitted well before the Article 4 direction came, which came in about 3 weeks ago on the 3rd of May, and was submitted with that in mind. So the applicant has bought the property, is buying the property, and had done his research to make sure that it would fit the criteria of the planning guidelines that were coming in. So it's only because it's been delayed that it's actually in committee here now. I think he made a decision 6 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago, without the time extension. You may well have been minded to approve it. However, Article 4 is in now, and we have to bear that in mind. As Sarah has pointed out, we've reduced the scheme significantly down. There are no external impacts now, apart from a small Velux window in the rear face, which is permitted development anyway. The number of potential occupants has been reduced, the number of rooms has been reduced, so 5 is the maximum. The Article 4 direction has 3 criteria about density, so sandwiching and clustering. And from the research we've been able to gather in the short time that Article 4 has been in and the publicly available data, the application meets all those criteria. So the application is Article 4 direction compliant. The material issues of character, parking, Sarah's already outlined, the report clearly states, highways have said, there are no material concerns on parking. There are no external changes proposed either, so the windows and doors are planned to be kept. If we find that the timber doors and frames are not suitable, they will then come in for a separate application and a list of building consent to be renewed back in timber. As you can see from the photographs, the gable end is quite severely dilapidated and will need re-rendering. There is a condition in the proposal that details of that are submitted. This, I presume, is the first of many applications which are running the Article 4 gauntlet. And we've done our best to try and make sure that it is fully compliant. I trust it is. The report from the officers do support that. So in conclusion, I'm hoping the £35 million that's going to be spent on the second phase of flood defences will protect these properties out this way. Hence the conditions on flood defences, cycles, bins, etc. The applicant is more than welcome to those. So I'm hoping that the committee will consider this in a positive way, this application, and consider it for approval with the conditions as highlighted in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Mr. John Davis. You have 3 minutes, sir. If you press the button on your... No, should...
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm not going to go into about the objections because we've got 3 councillors here speaking regarding the objections. My concerns are, because I'm the immediate next door neighbour, my concerns regarding this property being turned into a HMO as the next door neighbour, and I asked the committee if they to think about the input the application could have to the Chester Green area as a whole and to the neighbouring properties, especially to numbers 26 and 24 Marqueton Street. I noticed on the case officer's report that the comings and goings can raise concern from neighbours, but is not persuaded that the noise and disturbance that would be created would be different if it was a family of 4. We don't share the same opinion of these comings and goings of 5 individuals will be significantly greater and more frequent than a family of 4. If I could just explain the layout of the land about shared access. Right, the private shared right-of-way is the alleyway between houses number 26 and 28, and 26 is mine. Number 28's front door is sited in the middle of the alleyway. To the rear of the property serves access to numbers 28 garden, 26's garden and number 24's garden. Right, at present the rear access is in constant use by numbers 26 and 24 and a total of 4 persons using this access at this moment in time. And this is obviously done on a constant daily basis. The alleyway at the best of times is noisy and very echoing. So increasing footfall twofold will increase the noisy levels greatly, which could be detrimental to probably quality of life. It also has a security issue, especially with the front entry doors left open, and currently it's always closed at night. We also have a concern regarding the clientele that might enter into occupancy. We're actually led to believe by the applicant is seeking clients of the young professionals or students. We can't see that it would appeal to young professionals, especially with the parking permit refusal. There's also potential possibility that occupants could be of low income, on benefits, or occupation via social services. Concerns with the HMO regarding antisocial behaviour with 5 occupants, unrelated, strangers, i.e. smoking, drinking in the alleyway, shouting, swearing, loud music. And Chester Green has little or no antisocial behaviours at present, and currently obviously there is pensioner flats directly across the property.
Thank you, sir. Could you switch off your microphone, please?
Sorry?
Could you switch off your microphone, please?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davis. Thank you very much. Next speaker, Councillor Martin, I'll go to first.
Thank you, Chair. Along with many people in Chester Green, I would ask the committee to reject this application to convert what is a very small terraced house into a HMO. Let's be clear, Marqueton Street is a pedestrianised street with small terraced houses where the sense of community is strong. Living in such close proximity to one another, neighbours there are very neighbourly. They care for the planters on the street, they take part in street and community events, and they care for each other. This is not a street where a household of transient residents, which is what we usually have with HMOs, is suitable. Cramped into small living spaces in which there is no space to expand their lives as they develop, HMO residents rarely settle in the local area. And who can blame them? They deserve to move on to expanded living space when they can. There is no parking in Marqueton Street. The adjacent Chester Green Road has no parking, and there is limited parking in the entire area, which is almost entirely comprised of small, mainly terraced houses. Many residents are concerned that, having just voted in a residents' parking scheme, they'll find themselves having nowhere to park. If a small terraced house has numerous individual households, and they don't really want to pay for that non-privilege. Sadly, our experience of other HMOs in our ward is that they usually go hand in hand with many bins left out on the street. The house is right next to a Roman well, a historic monument. Each year, the well is dressed and the well is blessed. We want to encourage more visitors to see these Roman remains, not bags of rubbish piled up atop bursting bins. We all know the problems with HMOs. In fact, I've been here before and I've talked to you about them. This is why we introduced Article 4. Let's not subject more and more, often young people, to overcrowding and stick within the spirit of Article 4. This is the wrong application in very much the wrong street. Please reject it. It's the thin edge of the wedge to more and more HMOs in a conservation area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Repton.
Thank you.
You have 3 minutes, sir.
We're seeing in Chester Green, as in other parts of Darley Ward and other parts of Derby, the very character of these terraced family houses changing irreversibly by a massive increase in HMOs, which has increased in number since we proposed bringing in Article 4. Article 4 will go part way, but we need that local plan changing and tightening. And we need to get better control, as more cities do up and down this country, but we failed to do. And that's going to hopefully change over the next few months as more measures are brought into place. What's happening here in terms of Chester Green, I believe, and I've taken the advice of a senior ex-local authority planner who believes that the City Local Plan, Part 1, Core Strategy, January 2017, it goes against CP20, the Historic Environment, Parts A, C and G. It goes against AC9, the Derwent Valleys World Heritage Site, Part A. The City of Derby Local Plan Review 2006, Retained Policies, H16, Housing Extensions, and E18, Conservation Areas A. You've seen the objections. The objections are this is completely inappropriate. There are family houses, as Mr Davis has said, right next door and throughout the area. It's a conservation area. It's in a World Heritage zone. And this proposal goes completely against the grain of the local area. It will change the local area and its character completely. There is substantial objection to it. And we're hoping that councillors tonight will side with the people of Derby because they're fed up of the numbers of HMOs being driven by profit motives of developers against the wishes and the characters of these terrace houses and terrace streets in Derby. And it's about time now that all councillors of all parties stood up for the people in Derby and said enough's enough. We have 2,000 rented accommodations being built in this city for single people. There's a lack of family homes, so now it is important to make sure those remaining family homes we actually protect. Mr Davis is right, and all the people he represents in Chester Green, as myself, Councillor Alison Martin and Carmel Swan. So we urge council members here today on this committee to reject it on the grounds of loss of light, loss of amenity, out of proportion, lack of parking, lack of actual issues with regard to bins on streets, and many, many more. The main purpose is it will change in a negative way the very character of this area, as it is doing throughout the city. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Upton. Sarah, have you got any points to come back for? Thank you.
Yes, I think there's a few issues just to come back on, just to say this is not an overly intense residential use. It is a house in multiple occupation, but it's only for a 5-bedroom. And we are proposing to attach a condition that limits it to that. The new HMO Article 4 has guidance associated with it, as Councillor Repton's pointed out, that isn't ingrained in our local plan policy at the moment. But in terms of the guidance it provides in looking at the intensification of how many HMOs are in that area, this proposal easily meets with that guidance. We cannot put forward evidence that there are too many in this area. On the contrary, there are quite a few in Marqueton Street particularly. We don't have a policy to protect family homes. This is a residential use that is proposed in a residential area. In terms of the heritage impacts, we have looked at that. And as I said in my opening address, we have sought revisions and we are happy that there are limited external changes to the building and there's a neutral effect arising. There's no harm deemed to be arising for the conservation area or the World Heritage Site buffer. There are no extensions proposed, so issues relating to light, overbearance, massing are not an issue with this application.
Thank you, Sarah. Committee, over to you. Councillor Bunce.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a couple of points. I mean, I am pleased to see us initially concerned about the impact on the conservation area, so I was pleased to see those revisions. But what I am really concerned about in this application is there's undoubtedly going to be increased comings and goings, and because of the layout of this particular property with the front door being down that alleyway, the front door isn't on the front of the house, is it, as I understand it? That the front door is down a shared alleyway. And to me, that is a major concern in terms of the amenities to the neighbours and, you know, the impact of this. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Kerr, I was looking at you then.
I was also, I was really pleased that the speaker highlighted that side entry and looking at the layout. It's not everybody who will be using that, but it is the majority of residents who will be using it. And I think some comment on that would be really helpful from officers, whether that is something that has happened in other HMOs or not, and what can be done to ensure that the front door, in terms of guidance, I don't know who owns that front door, but maybe there needs to be some thought about how that is secured or has some sort of retainer on it to make sure that it is remained closed when it should be closed. But I also had a question about the flooding situation. And yes, we've done the OCOR works in this area, and I think they were actually tested last year when we had some significant rain. But what would happen to a situation like this with ground floor bedrooms if there were to be in future time, 10 years' time, whatever, that OCOR is no longer adequate and it's failed in some way? What would happen in terms of an approval for this sort of use and ground floor bedrooms? Is that something that we need to be aware of and asking questions about? It's a good-sized garden that we have on this property, and if it's a property where it doesn't have residents who are likely to be looking after it, then I think we need to have a landscape condition for that rear garden to make sure that it doesn't become an issue to neighbours. And I think a general management condition that looks after things like bins would also be helpful and make sure that that has been attended to. But the shared entrance, I think I'd like further comments on, and also that flood situation.
Sarah?
In terms of the entrance being a shared one and down the alley, that again, that is a current situation. So this property could already be occupied by a family group of 4 at least occupiers using that entry anyway. And as we have concluded in the report, we don't feel that there's a case to be made here where we could claim that the comings and goings associated with that would be so injurious as to warrant a refusal of permission. In terms of how the site is managed and making sure the door is closed and things like that, it would be unreasonable for us to try and condition that. It'd be difficult to enforce, and that lies within the management of whoever runs the house in multiple occupation rather than the planning process. In terms of the flood risk situation, we've been advised by land drainage colleagues who have told us that the risk here arises from a potential breach or overtopping scenario. So the Oakall flood defences are there protecting the property, but if they were breached in the future or overtopped, that's where the flood risk remains. But they have advised that given the location of this property, in that scenario, the water would have dissipated to a level where they could not substantiate a flood risk objection to the proposal. We are recommending conditions for a flood response plan, which the property possibly doesn't have at the moment, and flood resilience measures, which it possibly doesn't have at the moment. So the proposal would improve the flood resilience of the property.
Happy with that, Lucy?
The matter of the back garden and the landscaping scheme, and in terms of a layout of the back garden, and I'm happy to be corrected here, but we have the side gate that we've seen pictures of on the side access, and we have a door into the shared kitchen downstairs. So the rear garden could be laid out to encourage the side door to be used and access normally to be gained through the kitchen into the property rather than through the side access, through the shared access. Is that something that has been explored with the applicant, or is it something that could be explored?
The applicant is nodding his head.
So I know I'm not allowed to talk, but that's almost a given that there's a side access that you would normally probably find occupants who use side access as opposed to the alleyway access. But I'll leave it to Sarah to say that.
Yeah, it's not something that we've explored. I mean, if committee was so minded, we could condition a layout plan for the rear garden. Yeah.
Councillor Bowman.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a difficult one, I grant you for this one. But listening to the officers' comments and obviously listening very carefully to the speakers, including 2 of the local councillors, there are a lot of assumptions that we don't know, and most of those assumptions are not planning relevant. However, I think it was the planning officers just mentioned the management plan. That's where we need to ensure that whoever is managing this property will do so in a sensible and thoughtful way and bear in mind the residents nearby. As the officer has said, it's not overly intensive. We could have had a family here with more than 5 occupants. So I think we've got to look at it, in a practical way. But I obviously do have fears that the residents have outlined, but it's not evidence and they're assumptions. I was concerned, or not concerned, but can I have some clarification on what Councillor Repton said at the end of his 3-minute delivery regarding CP20? Are there any issues about that? Should we be aware of anything
No.
coming out of Councillor Repton's contribution?
We've got no concerns about that.
Okay.
No.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a quick question, really, in going back to the issue of bin storage, which has been raised as a potential issue by the ward councillors and others. Is there any acceptance or inclusion of that in the plans, or is that something that we can perhaps mandate? I presume that they'd be looking at storage in the back garden and using that same entrance to take the bins in and out that would be used by the residents as the main entrance. So do we have any more information on the plans for bin storage?
At the present time, we haven't got a plan, but we are seeking one through condition. The rear garden's got more than sufficient space for bin storage, so we're not concerned and are happy that we can deal with it by condition.
No other speakers?
Councillor Evans.
Oh, Councillor Evans, yes.
Sorry. It may not be related to the planning, but I always wonder with these things, what's the reason for changing it from a family dwelling into a HMO? What's the reason? Is it financial?
That would be a question for the developer, and it's not, as you say, it's not a planning issue. We shall move to the vote. All those in favour of the that was close.
I'm just wanting to ensure that we have a condition with a management requirement, which isn't currently listed.
You got that, Sarah? Yeah, that is including the conditions you've set out, Lucy, yeah. All those in favour of the application?
Sorry, did you
take
a promoter and a seconder?
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yeah, Councillor Kerr.
Yeah.
Councillor Bolton. All those in favour of the application? Six in favour. 6 in favour. Any against? 2 against. Thank you very much. That application is carried. Thank you. Thank you for the speakers. We now move on to item 8.3 in the documents, which is 4 Pinglehill Way, Chellaston, Derby. And that is Aaron, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application is before committee again, after it was deferred at the last meeting. A committee site visit took place Wednesday, 30th of May. Yet I understand a number of members have visited the site on their own accord. There were no updates or changes to speak of, so the report and recommendation is as before. A total of 60 letters of objection and 27 letters of support have been received. The main points of objection relate to traffic, parking, noise, change of character, and impact on the community. The 2 key planning issues to consider relate to residential amenity and the highway parking impacts. On both these grounds, the report explains on pages 39 to 42 why the application would be acceptable. As per the report, and recommendation is given to grant permission with conditions. Chair, the highway officer is present to field any related questions, and there are 4 speakers to address committee.
Thank you, Aaron. Mr. Searer, again, you have 3 minutes, sir.
It's my third project here tonight. Thank you, Chair. Don't want to reiterate what was said to the committee last time, so I'm hoping the queries and questions from then have been clearly addressed during the site visit. Once again, what I will, however, reiterate is the council's own childcare slogan: "Every child matters." The applicants are sat in the gallery. They are young men from Derby, brought up in Derby, who have been through the care system and now want to give back to the community. So for them, they are operating in the care sector already and are looking to now provide the service which is in dire need in the city, which the City Council is trying to provide, but also through partnerships with local service providers. So that's the need it is fulfilling. Again, the impact on the local area, the highways report has come back very positive in favour of it, with 2 to 3 children living in the house with 1 or 2 carers. Again, it is no different to a residential property. And as we heard in the previous application, a family could move in there, 5, 6, 7 people, and you could have a worse scenario in the residential amenity view than perhaps with 2 or 3 children being looked after. And these are children who, I'm sure, sat in this room, while there are individuals who have been through the care process and hopefully have come out fairly well. So the applicants, have tried their best to address the issues. Security, highways, residential amenity, the officer's report addresses all those issues. And at the end of the day, this will be a house which is no different to a residential property. There are many children's homes like this across the city. And once they're scattered, they're not in any dense area, they're scattered. And I said previously that if the residents of the street, of the local area, are so caring about what's happening in their area, I'm hoping that they will be as caring in bringing up the children, vulnerable children, who find themselves, through unfortunate circumstances, being cared for. Broken families, etc., etc. I'm sure you've sat on the children's committees or aware of the reports coming out there. Why do the children need the care that they need? I know the individuals for several years, perhaps 5 or 6 years, and they are personable people who want to provide a good service for Derby, and not, like one of them many years ago was shipped off to Manchester to spend his formative years there, then to come back to Derby, and having lost out in his formative years of living out of Derby. So it's local individuals. They have to operate through a company because that's what the sector requires them to do. But they want their passion comes from their heart to deliver a service locally for local kids by local people. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Trevor Cliff, you have 3 minutes, sir. Mr. Sirra, could you switch your mic off? Thank you very much. And again.
The residents thank the Planning Committee for undertaking the site visit to Pinglehill Way as requested at the previous meeting. We, the community who call this home, believe this visit was crucial to highlight and reaffirm what our primary concerns are. Number 4, being in a poor location for the planned change of use, road safety, more traffic and increased on-road, on-pavement parking at the busy T-junction. Residents exiting their properties, increased noise 24/7. During the visit, a point of view / comment was made. I didn't realise how narrow the road is. At the time of the pre-arranged visit, some residents and vehicles were unavoidably still out at work, so potentially not giving the committee members a full and clear overview of how congested Pinglehill Way is during an average weekday. The neighbourhood and our well-being will be negatively impacted by increased traffic and vehicle movements at number 4. Comings and goings at all hours of the day and night, resident access / parking, emergency blue light vehicle access. Road safety on our narrow road will be stretched to its absolute limit. These are our concerns and worries, particularly at the already very busy T-junction immediately outside number 4. This is an accident just waiting to happen. Increased pavement parking will cause conflict and make it even more difficult for residents accessing and exiting their driveways. The residents of Pinglehill Way are neither NIMBYs or anti-local residential care facilities, but this application for change of use at number 4 is quite simply in the wrong location for its proposed future use. At the previous Planning Committee meeting, a probationary period of 12 months was suggested. Were planning approval to be granted, can we request this probationary period to commence from when the business is open and fully operational? Will this be clarified and confirmed if this planning application is approved? The impact on our neighbourhood and local community will only be a negative one. Thank you for this second opportunity to again express our concerns and fears. The residents of Pinglehill Way, Chellaston. Thank you. Apologies for the croaky voice.
No problem at all, Mr Clifford. We all heard you very loud and clear. Thank you very much. Mr Williams.
Residents are concerned that increased undeclared visitation to and from the business will exceed that of a normal residential family. It was stated that additional supporting professionals will be required by 2 of the directors of the business at the only meeting they've held with the residents. Some professionals can only conduct welfare checks of children face-to-face. These are declared as Zoom calls in the application. Therefore, the application is not a true reflection of visitation. It was also declared at this meeting that the business does not care about the residents' concerns. Quote, "We will proceed regardless." This volatile interaction was recorded with the business's consent. The business wants all the benefits of the neighbourhood, which have been created by its residents. Yet through their actions, they have shown they don't want to contribute to its growth or work with the residents to find a resolution to this worsening relationship. This has left residents feeling aggrieved, and as such, there is ill feeling towards this business. Is there a risk that this could eventually spill over if an incident occurs or frustration over parking problems manifest? This could, of course, occur in front of or in the proximity of any children homed at this business residency. Yet the business states this residency is a safe, nurturing environment for vulnerable children. Whilst this conflict between the business and the residents is ongoing, how can this business be regarded as a safe, nurturing environment? It's a potential powder keg. The business's failure to interact positively with the residents has created this situation. This includes the behaviour of one of its directors following the residents' meeting where the police were called. There is no clear route of escalation into this business, nor is any reckoning applied to the business. Is the escalation through DCC, the daily carers, the directors, the owner of the property? They have already stated they don't care, but a lack of care to resolve conflicts will just generate further ill will towards this business. The risk regarding emergency services accessing this narrow cul-de-sac location has been proved to be real. An ambulance recently struggled to gain access to a medical emergency. Increased parking will only worsen the situation. All residents have a basic human right to have a peaceful existence for private and family life. It feels as if our rights are placed second to this business application. The only clear beneficiary of this application is a business collecting government or local council monies. It won't be the children stuck in the middle of this conflict. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr Williams. Can you switch your microphone off, please? Thank you very much. Councillor Ingle.
Thank you, Chair. It's funny listening to the applicant, and he's saying that the owners want to give something back. Of course they want to give something back, and then they want to charge 20 grand a week for that service that they're going to give back. So let's be dead straight here. This is about making money, and making money off the Derby taxpayer. Mr Chair, this property is going to have up to 3 children at any one time. By the admission of the directors, each child could have 2 carers per child, plus a manager on site. Now, if my maths is correct, that's 10 people on site at any one time. At shift changeover, another 7 people will have to come on site. That'll be 17 people on site at any one time. Plus, as has been said, we will have other medical protection people coming in to do checks and face-to-face and one-to-ones with the children on site. So there could be 20, 22 people on site at any one time. Does that sound like a residential use to you, Mr Chair? Because it certainly doesn't to me. I would move that this committee rejects this. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the speakers. Aaron, do you want to come back on any of those points before we go to the committee?
Just to point out, the application form states that for up to 3 children, 2 staff members will be living in at any one time, but obviously other health and medical professionals will also be visiting on the demands and needs of what's needed. So that's the overview within the application.
Thanks, Aaron. You can't come back, Phil, sorry. Committee. Councillor Bonser.
Yes, just one question really. The City Council's position is the preferred model is for 2-bedroom children's homes. So I'm wondering why we're looking at 3 bedrooms here, and whether the developer has considered sort of falling in line with the City Council's preferred model, which is to limit the size of children's homes to 2.
One on that one? You know the regulations in?
That's the proposal that's been put before us, Chair. I don't know the backstory behind it as to why they've applied for 3 as opposed to 2. I don't know if Aaron can elucidate.
There's minimal information in the application about that, but I think it does indicate in the supporting statement that the 3rd bedroom is for emergency use when a child has to be housed at a short notice. But I think that's the only indication as to why it's 3 and not 2 for emergency provision when needed.
So we're saying basically it's an application for 2 children there, with a proposal that the 3rd one could be there in an emergency. Committee. Councillor Bolton, then Councillor Kerr, yeah. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Obviously, as we're aware, apart from Councillor Evans, this came to a previous meeting where it was deferred for a site meeting. I understand that only 2 councillors went on the site meeting, which is disappointing. I think we have to look at this criteria. If councillors vote for a site meeting, they should try and attend. And I think we need, as I said earlier on a previous report, the officers, when we move a site visit, have to go to the fact of organising it, liaising with various people, and then only 2 councillors turn up of this committee. I think we need to look at that. That's a side issue, but I just wanted to comment that I have been to site, not at the site meeting. I think where we have an application like this, it's up to councillors to go and visit themselves, because we can do. We don't need an officer there. Officers have got a lot of time to spend on other cases. As we saw earlier, you know, they're stretched. I think we need to think about that as a committee, Chair. Perhaps something we need to come on to at another time. But I wanted to say, you know, this has been deferred from a previous meeting for a site visit. Only 2 councillors attended. That aside, in my view, the site visit was just to put it in the long grass for a month. We need to make a decision, hence it being here this evening. And I understand, we all have had previous experience of similar applications. We're assuming again, and it's the fear of the not known. As soon as you say a residential children's home, those poor children are given a title and there are fears. I know we're all corporate parents. I'm on the corporate parenting committee. Those children need a home where they can be loved and where they can live as a family. I think we've got to understand that this is a family home. We could have more children living in this home if it went on the market as an ordinary family home in a residential area. So I think there's got to be give and take on all sides. What we've done in the past, Chair, and you'll know from previous applications, we have to ensure that whoever runs this establishment has got a strict management plan and they liaise with the local councillors if there are any issues. Furthermore, we have done previously, given a 12-month temporary permission, and that won't start till obviously the house is occupied, going on what a previous speaker mentioned to us. Because there are a lot of assumptions, as I've said. In my view, we haven't got any reasons to refuse this application. It's a residential area. As was said, and as I saw, the road is narrow, but I think if you look at the highway implications and the highways comments, there's nothing that is alarming there. And as regards an emergency vehicle, believe me, if they are needed, they will get down any street. So I think the fears of local residents can be put to bed on that issue, whether that be an ambulance or a fire engine. I understand there has been some interactions with the neighbourhood and the potential occupancy of the home. Let's hope there can be some mediation. We all want this to work. All the children want is a home, and hopefully the residents in this part of Chellaston will do what they can to assist those children. They just need the love and care of any family home. And I'm sure with a strict management plan, then any issues can be ironed out, and hopefully we can give the 12-month temporary period for the time being and then bring it back to committee.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Yes, thank you. I was one of the councillors who did attend, and there was more parking than we're seeing on the plan being shown to us at the moment. But it wasn't a level of parking that is unusual for this sort of an estate. It is challenging, and there certainly are times when people have to go and find a parking space which isn't immediately at their destination. And I think this needs to be made clear to the staff that if there isn't a parking space that's available and will retain access through on that road network, they will need to find that parking space a little further away and maybe walk for 100 yards to get to where they actually need to get. And that isn't unusual. The points about a management plan, I think, are really important, and hopefully that management plan will take advice from other similar establishments and be able to rebuild what sound like somewhat fractured relationships, and I hope that that can be done, because where a management plan is working well, the community does feel supported and they don't feel as threatened as if there isn't anything in place. I think the 12 months is important, and that, as has been stated, needs to start when the use starts and not from when the approval is given. If there is learning from this location, assuming it's approved, then I think it's really useful if that comes back into the planning department so that management plans can be written better in the future and we can be more cognizant about where approval is given. So I think that's an invitation to residents to say, please keep in touch. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Lucy. Martin, I think you indicated.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I did find the site visit quite useful, and as has been mentioned, it did actually raise the issue of how narrow the road is to the left-hand side of the property, and it was useful to visit to see that along there. So it's not actually wide enough for double parking. So if there were residents already parked on one side, then you wouldn't get any other vehicles parked comfortably on the other side. So I think we accept that. It was clear that you could get 3 vehicles comfortably on the driveway, and there are also, as you can see on that photo, 2 spaces available back towards Acrefield Way. So I think if we assume 3 members of staff at any one time parking on the driveway, then there are 2 additional spaces available for any visitors to the property. So I would support this as long as we have that condition of 12 months, and as the resident has asked for, in terms of starting from occupation rather than from the date of approval. And I would hope that the management plan is sufficient to try and resolve some of the issues that obviously exist between the applicants and the residents. Hopefully that's a good working plan that can do that, and then it can be reviewed in 12 months. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. Go for us.
Thank you, Chair. I think what my colleagues have said, and Councillor Kerr, I think we should give them a 12 months permission and see how it goes. And, you know, with the staff, not every staff's got a car, not every staff's got a vehicle. You can't just assume that they will have cars. And, you know, I know the street very well, and all the street mostly around like that, down Chelliston anyway. So if a family came and lived there with 4 cars, what would you do? You know, so I think we should give them a 12 months conditional, you know, permission and see how it goes after 12 months. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments? We move to the vote. We will add in a condition for the management plan to be very robust.
Yeah.
And a 12-month probationary period.
Yeah.
Everybody happy with that?
Move it, Chair.
Moved. Can I have a second, please? Go for us, thank you. All those in favour of the application? Six. You've got Lucy as well.
6, Chair.
Six, yeah. Any against? 1 against. That is approved. Thank you very much, all the speakers. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Ingle, as well. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll now move back to item 8.2, which is 111 Marqueton Street, Derby, and that is Ian. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I've not got anything to add to the report, and we'll just echo what Sarah said as part of the Marqueton Street discussion about guidance and what we're seeking to do with controlling HMOs. And I'll pass over to Councillor Repton.
You have 3 minutes, Martin.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm afraid, again, this is yet another HMR application in Darley Ward and the city. And as I said about half an hour ago, we're seeing massive numbers of these, and we're seeing numbers of loss of family properties in the area. So understandably, there are concerns. Understandably, myself as a local councillor, I've been contacted by my constituents who rightly expect me and fellow councillors to stand up for them and their areas. I believe that if this application is allowed, it would lead to further deterioration in the character of the area, loss of amenity, loss of light, overlooking, increased parking, increased numbers of bins on streets, and I think it's the wrong application in the wrong area. As I said, and I'm getting really frustrated, as a lot of councillors are, I think, in this city, because we don't seem to have the powers to actually make sure that we have more control over HMOs in this city. And we're seeing more and more of them coming into the city, and we're losing family homes. And the sooner that we embolden councillors here to stand up for local people and to object and refuse these applications, and for the council generally to tighten its powers, I know they're in the process of doing, but I believe they need to go further. And there are other lessons that we can learn around the country, but it seems to be taking a hell of a long time to get round to that situation, whilst a lot of people and families actually suffer. Again, I would urge members to seriously reject this on behalf of local people. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Martin. You okay with that?
Yeah, well, thanks.
Committee. Any comments? Sarah?
Yes, I know the area very well. In my view, it's over-intensified. There are 7 bedroom spaces. If that isn't over-intensification, I don't know what is. And knowing the street, it's always a very busy parked on that part of Marqueton Street, opposite the Bowls Green there. I have to say I've got my reservations, as we see on the plan. I have got my reservations about this application. I mean, Councillor Repton has just said we need to refuse it. I would have been interested if he'd said what grounds he would want us to refuse it on. He hasn't given us that bit. He's letting us sort that out for ourselves. But I am inclined to listen to what Councillor Repton has said to us. And I don't know whether there's any leeway to negotiate to reduce the bedrooms therein, but it does look very compact and too much in my view.
Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. I was surprised at the officer's comment that the room sizes was okay, because the resources and housing comment includes the reflection here that some of them are really quite tight. It says some of the stated sizes are very close to the minimum acceptable, and the developers should ensure that once internal finishes are applied, the floor space is sufficient. It also comments that bedroom 6 appears to have a roof light over the bed, which may indicate there is an amount of floor space below the sloping roof which may not be included in the assessment. I would like clarity about whether or not we're actually trying to squeeze more people into this room, into this house, than is going to give a good quality of accommodation. I think the principle is fine, but I'm not convinced that this is going to give each of those occupants a sufficient room. In one of the previous applications, the discussion within the planning team had reduced the number, and I think this maybe is required on this one as well. I would be happy to defer this and for further discussions to take place.
Ian, do you want to come back on that one?
Yeah, I take Councillor Kerr's point, and looking at the proposed second floor plan, maybe one unit in that level would be palatable as opposed to two. And then we could just speak to the agent and talk to him about communal space as well, given that the kitchen dining room is in the centre and just served by a door at the back. So I think we can, if you wanted to defer it, Chair, we would certainly go back and talk to them about what Councillor Bolton and Councillor Kerr have said and respond to your wishes. Yeah.
I think it's wise, Ian. I was just looking at that studio on the top floor, and there's no room to swing a cat in it. It really is. I know you were going to come back on that one, so you were going to say that as well, weren't you? So I'd be happy to defer, to go back to the developer if someone can propose and second, and then we vote on that one. Yeah. Propose, Sarah.
Yeah.
Lucy's second at that one.
That's right.
All those in favour of deferment for it to come back at a future date? That's carried. That's carried, yeah. Thank you for that one. Thank you, Martin. Thank you very much. Thank you. You get an early night, Martin, now. Okay. You've had a busy 2 days. Thank you very much. We'll now move to item 8.4, which is Thornhill Lodge Guest House. Ian, this is another one that's come back from previous one, and it's Ian, you again.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As you recall, Chair, it was deferred the last time around. There was a discussion about the public sector equality duty, and since the meeting, the agent has responded and put together a note which is in your report, and essentially they've made the following comment in relation to the public sector equality duty. They've said, we note the application has again been deferred due to the Council's duties under Section 149 of the Equality Act, with specific reference to the nearby care home and nursery. While we fully support the importance of the PSED, we respectfully submit that the duty does not prevent development but requires due regard to the potential impacts on protected groups, and the Council must act proportionately and base its conclusions on evidence, not assumptions or generalised concerns. And they go on to say the care home houses 25 residents with dementia. Our proposal originally accommodated the same number of individuals, working professionals who typically lead structured, low-impact lives, suggesting that such residents are inherently more disruptive, risk reinforcing harmful and unfounded stereotypes about HMOs, which could in itself raise equality concerns. Then they point out some case law about planning decisions being grounded in material evidence. They also, in their statement, talk about the amendments that they've made, the reduced occupancy in direct response to early concerns, the proposal being designed in full compliance with space standards, all building regulations being met, including Part B fire safety and Part M accessibility, and the on-site layout that accommodates refuse storage, cycle provision, and 5 on-site parking spaces. They also talk about the consequences of delay and alternative use. They've said that there's been an impact on the sellers who were elderly and who were moving on into their retirement. And they've talked about the tilted balance situation, the presumption in favour of sustainable development, and the fact that we will get 16 high quality immediately available units for key workers and local professionals. So they've addressed the public sector equality duty. It's over to you to talk about if you think that's a sufficient response to it. But I would just point out, as a use or as a proposal, the number is now aligns with the B&B use, which has been carried out there for some time, and which is the fallback use, of course, should this proposal not go ahead. So we have to be mindful of that, and what what we are seeking to achieve with affordable housing, and this paying or contributing to that. With that, Chair, I shall pass over to the Speaker. Thank you.
We have 3 speakers. Belinda Hadfield, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Chair and members, on behalf of Thornhill Road residents, I urge you to reject this 16-bedroom HMO proposal. It threatens our close-knit, family-oriented street, overstretched infrastructure and vulnerable neighbours at Thornhill Day Nursery and Holly Tree. Thornhill Road is a quiet family street with homes averaging 1 to 4 residents. A 16-bedroom HMO is far too intense, introducing transient tenants and disruption that could fracture our community's harmony. The 2010 High Court case Brent LBC versus Risky Business emphasises that planning decisions must be evidence-based, especially when vulnerable groups with protected characteristics are affected. This proposal lacks such evidence. The applicant's architect claims 16 working professional tenants will lead low-impact lives and that limiting occupancy to 16 is sufficient. These are assumptions, not evidence. The council's school safe haven zone prioritises child safety, yet this HMO, adjacent to Thornhill Day Nursery, risks increased traffic and parking chaos. The planning officer's reliance on 2007 parking data of 0.3 vehicles per room is outdated and ignores modern car ownership trends. Over 40 employees between Holly Tree and the nursery travel to work, not one cycles, undermining claims of cycle provision mitigating parking issues. Extra vehicles coming and going could block nursery access or emergency vehicles endangering children and residents. The planning officer cites the NPPF's tilted balance due to Derby's housing shortfall. However, paragraph 11 also requires that harm must not significantly outweigh benefits. The harm here is clear: disrupted community cohesion, strained infrastructure, and risks to vulnerable groups. The architect's comparison to a former B&B is misleading. It hasn't operated as one since before the pandemic, when it was professionally managed, not a self-managed HMO with transient tenants. The police superintendent's October 2024 statement highlights HMO's evidenced increased crime risks, yet these concerns are dismissed. With 29 objections and no resident support, our community stands united against this proposal. You don't live here, we do. We say the daily realities this HMO would disrupt. We respectfully ask you to reject this application, protecting Thornhill Road's character, infrastructure and vulnerable residents with a decision grounded in evidence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just switch your microphone off, please. Thank you very much. Bev Collins, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. We've read the statement submitted to the Council from the owners and from, we assume, the developers, as well as the Council's own documents. It seems that many of our previous objections have simply been either ignored or brushed aside. With regards to the public sector equality duty, the Council seems to be largely relying on the statement from the developers to mitigate this requirement. This states that the duty does not prevent development but requires due regard to the potential impacts on protected groups, and that the Council must act proportionately and base its conclusions on evidence, not assumptions or generalised concerns. They go on to talk about tenants being working professionals. Where is the evidence for this? How can it be assumed that this will continue as such for the next decade? We have invited council members to come and see the evidence for themselves. Our concerns are not assumptions or generalised. The owner, manager and myself have accumulated 60 years of experience, and as such our views should be considered as evidence. The final thing they say is that the building would revert back to a B&B. We have no objections to this at all. We reiterate our point that we have 30 staff, 25 families, GPs, nurses and ambulance attending our home throughout the day. We cannot see how 16 people and their visitors would not increase traffic. We also cannot see that, how there will not be an increase in noise causing unacceptable harm to us, something that was discussed at length in the last meeting. The Council's document still states that this is not unacceptable harm, although many Council members here know and discussed otherwise last time as regards to patients living with dementia. There was talk about extra soundproofing and a feasibility study about a larger soundproof structure outside, yet all of this seems to have fallen by the wayside. The current owners say they have never heard anything from inside Holly Tree Lodge. However, our main concern is the noise generated outside. The managers occupied the flat upstairs for 15 years and can attest to the noise from the B&B. They also say that the B&B was busy. However, it's always seemed pretty quiet to us and still managed to generate noise. A B&B for 19, unless it's permanently full, will not be the same as the 16 permanent residents, possibly with a high turnover. This is not a comparable level of occupation. The owner states that because there are already windows on the side of the building, additional windows wouldn't make any difference. This would actually allow other people to look into the home, infringing on our residents' rights to privacy. It's also stated that tenants would be doctors and nurses on short contracts with the hospital. There's no way to know this for sure. So there's no evidence for this assertion. This permission would be of serious detriment to Holly Tree Lodge. Again, as mentioned previously, if you speak to adult social care, you'll find that we are a good, very well-run home. Thank you.
I was about to say that's your 3 minutes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Councillor Ashby, come over. You've got 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and for allowing me to come and speak on this again. I too would like to really reiterate what's been said before with regards to the letter to the Planning Committee from the Adam Wilson on behalf of the owners. On the one hand, saying that it's going to be filled with working professionals, and then on the other hand, he and the council take this 2007 data, saying there will only be 0.3 cars per number of people in the house. I live a stone's throw from Thornhill Road. My daughter was living at home with us when she was a junior doctor at the Royal Derby Hospital. She, like my neighbour consultant at the hospital, walked to work. Excellent. But they also needed cars to facilitate their jobs because they needed not alone to travel to the Royal Derby Hospital, they needed to travel to other healthcare facilities around the county, such as Ripley and Burton hospitals. So that's either it's working professionals who will all need a car park space, or it won't be working professionals who don't need a car parking space. It's not both. So whilst Adam Wilson says everything needs to be predicated on material evidence, he's not doing that himself. I would reiterate the request from Holly Tree that the due care and attention is paid to the fact that there's a care home with 25 residents, and would look for conditions regarding both the extra windows that would face the care home and soundproofing, because we know that people with dementia are very vulnerable. With regards to the on-street parking, these people are not going to have cars that are going to need parking, but all around there's permit parking on both Trowles Lane and Thornhill Road. So where are they going to park? They will have cars. We know they will have cars. We all have cars. We're all here, most of us here, maybe not everybody, but most of us have cars. Many of us are in families where there's more than one car per household, if not 2 or 3. and this is also going to happen here. I would ask the committee to take into account the objections of the neighbours, both the residential neighbours that Belinda has brought and the objections from Cal and those who live and work at the care home. And my final question to the committee is, well, two quickly. Firstly, how are the 16 occupants going to be policed? It's been reduced from 25 to 16, but there's no change in the actual plan. And also the tilt in favour of granting approval due to the housing shortfall. Our housing shortfall is for families, not for single people, and all this produces is rooms for single people.
Thank you, Colm. That was smack on time, that was. Well done, well done. Ian, do you want to come back on any of those comments, please?
No, Chair, just to remind you that the tilted balance is engaged when we don't have a 5-year housing land supply. As your report states, it's at 3.85 years, and so it is engaged. That was drawn out by the inspector at the Royal Hill Farm Public Inquiry. So we are in that position. It does contribute to the council's housing land supply, but of course you've got to make the decision based on the individual circumstances of this particular application. It being what the previous use has been, what the proposed use is, what the original application sought, what the reductions have been, what the site layout provides in terms of parking, the locational characteristics of the building, it being in a sustainable location, affording people opportunities to travel and to walk and to use public transport, and the fact that this is a building that will be used for something. And so the previous bed and breakfast use hasn't been abandoned, so that could be reinstated. And it's, you know, your concerns that have been previously looked at in terms of the overall intensity of the use have been addressed, and they have provided a statement in relation to the public sector equality duty, and it's for you to gauge and to consider if that is sufficient for you to make a decision. But if Stephen's got anything to add on that point, Chair.
Stephen's shaking his head. No. There was just one point. One of the speakers has said about the plan hasn't changed from 25 to 16, but there is the condition. Yeah. There is restriction to 16 occupants. Yeah, that condition is enforceable, Chair. I mean, we would be able to, you know, monitor that. I mean, we can't, as the speakers have rightly suggested, it's the agent has said that it will be directed towards, you know, low impact living professionals, but we can't control that. But we can control the total number of residents at any one time. That's a reasonable condition that we can enforce. Thanks, Ian. Committee, any comments? Councillor Pattison.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on the agent's response to the PSED, which I actually found very disappointing because we had a bit of debate around this and the impact that the home could have on the care facility opposite, and it seems in the agent's response that other than acknowledging that we raised concerns around it, they don't actually appear to have put forward any suggestions or any possible mitigation to try and address some of the concerns that we as a committee had raised, and instead just seem to throw back at us so that we're stereotyping HMOs. So, yeah, I think it's a bit of an insulting response on that particular issue that we raised, if I'm honest. So it's I'm not too sure what to make of it. Yeah, it's disappointing.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr.
At the last meeting we had, and I think we've had it today, the plan showing the number of HMOs in this particular area. And there is another one directly opposite, almost directly opposite this applicant site, but opposite the care home. And I don't know if anyone's here with the data, but I asked about whether or not there had been any complaints about that one, whether to do with ASB or antisocial behaviour, or to do with noise. And apparently we didn't have anything on record along those lines, which is evidence, and we've been asked what evidence do we have. It's not as large. I think they said it was either 8 or 10 that it is registered for. How many people are actually there is a different matter. What we haven't got in our conditions is a condition about management. We've got a landscaping scheme condition, and I hope that's a landscaping management condition and not just a landscaping scheme by itself. And I think we also need to have a management plan that would do with things like bins, and there's been comment about that somebody's going to come and take the bins in and out. But I think it needs to be there as a written management condition. And the management condition could also acknowledge and make sure that it is advertised with no parking, or you have to pay extra for the parking. So we do not have a situation where there are people bringing cars which they cannot park in the area because they don't qualify for the residence parking scheme and there is not sufficient parking on site. And I think that needs to be covered through a management plan as well. So I think we need a management plan as a condition to include those points and potentially others as well. But I can't see a reason why this is not something that could be going ahead. To have a bed and breakfast here in the current climate could mean that the majority of those bed and breakfast places are being taken up by people who are off the homelessness list, changing frequently, or they could be people who are coming with cars who are struggling to find parking. So I think that the not total stability that you get with a resident owning property, which is what most of the rest of the street is, but to have the reassurance of a well-managed professional, which is their target, HMO, is significantly better than what could be in that area if it were to return now to a B&B. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Any other comments? Councillor Bolton.
Yeah, I think I'm inclined to agree with what Councillor Kerr has said. We have to bear in mind the previous use. We've managed to get the reduction from 25 to 16. I think now we've got to make a decision one way or the other. In my mind, I can't find anything that we could refuse it on. We've got to be sensible about this. If we move a refusal, we've got to have good grounds, because obviously, as we know, the applicant can appeal. A management plan, I feel, needs to be in place. There needs to be some liaison, and I'm sure there will be anyway with local councillors. I'm sure the local councillors, if there are any issues, will be told about it by the neighbourhood. I think this is one where we've got to bite the bullet. We've got to agree what's before us. But clearly I agree with Councillor Kerr. We need to make sure that the management plan is adhered to. And if not, I'm sure we will hear about it, Chair. I think we've got as far as we can with this application. I have been to site several times. I live nearby. I've done my own observations, and I think this is one that we've got to now proceed as outlined by the officers.
Thanks, Sarah. Sue, do you want to come in first? Just come in first, yeah.
Yeah, just a quick one. Given that the high levels of concern and uncertainty raised by the residents, are we able to put the same sort of temporary condition on this sort of application in terms of management plan and acceptability as we do in other situations, such as with children's homes?
I'll refer to Mr Woodhead on that one.
Yeah, the planning practice guidance, which talks about many things, including planning conditions and the use thereof, says that you can apply temporary permissions. Clearly, that's what we've done with the children's care homes and other things. But in this case, I don't think the developer is going to expense in terms of certain alterations to the building. But if you wanted to include that, then the agent applicant would have the the right to appeal that condition if they felt it was unreasonable. But if that's what you want as part of this discussion, as part of the extra conditions, then that could be included. I don't know if Stephen's got any thoughts.
Could I propose that, Chair? If that's...
Yeah, I'll second that proposal.
We've got a proposer and a seconder. So
Yeah. 12 months.
12 months.
12 months.
Yeah.
So
I'll propose that.
Also, Chair.
Support Councillor Pons.
Okay.
Also, if you wanted, given that it's the particular circumstances of this case, if you wanted to mention in the management plan that there is a specific obligation to talk to neighbouring occupiers about how the facility, how the HMO would be run. So there would be, something within that to force the manager or whoever's going to be the final operator to talk to neighbours about their concerns.
So after that, if we go for, we'll go to the vote with a management plan, robust management plan, and a 12-month probationary period once the building is occupied. Happy with that?
Yeah.
Chair, I think it needs to be not once it's occupied, but once they are accepting occupants, because it might never be fully occupied.
No, that's fine. That's a point of order as such, yes. Yep, happy with that. Move to the vote. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Amin, thank you very much. All those in favour of the application with those conditions added, please.
2, 4, 6,
7 for. Any against? 1. That application is approved with those conditions. So thank you very much. Thank you, ladies, for turning up tonight. Thank you for your speeches. Thank you very much. Thank you. And we move on to the final item tonight, which is 8.5, which is Bradshaw Retail Park. Laura.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. This is an outline planning application for the redevelopment of Bradshaw Way Retail Park. It proposes the demolition of the existing retail units and the creation of up to 478 new homes with 528 square metres of commercial space and associated landscaping. The application has been submitted in an outline format with all matters reserved. Some members may recall a previous scheme on this site which was presented to committee in June 2023. That scheme was referred to the Secretary of State following an objection from Historic England due to building heights and impacts on heritage assets. The Secretary of State has now withdrawn that call-in, and we can now progress with that application as per your previous resolution. Late items circulated to members yesterday included a letter from the applicant and their agent, a set of Bradshaw Way parameters plans, correspondence between the agent and the case officer, which consider an alternative approach to the parameters plans, and an updated set of draft conditions. These late items demonstrate the proactive collaboration between officers and the applicant to ensure certainty over land use and parameters, whilst allowing design details to be considered later at a reserved matter stage. This application focuses on whether the site is suitable for redevelopment, primarily for residential use. Details such as layout, scale, landscaping, access and appearance will be addressed at the reserved matter stage, guided by the submitted parameters plans. These plans show how the site could accommodate 5 blocks of varying heights with up to 94 car parking spaces and commercial uses, all within an improved public realm which would enhance pedestrian connectivity. The report sets out material considerations and consultation responses. Key matters such as flood risk, contamination, ecology, noise and air quality can be appropriately managed by condition. Highways have raised no objections and the proposal is broadly compliant with national and local planning policy subject to conditions. Historic England, the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Partnership and the World Heritage Committee have no objections to the proposal. Some concerns remain around building heights, but these can be fully addressed at the reserved matters stage. This is an outline application, and as the decision maker, you are being asked to consider whether the principle of redeveloping a sustainably located brownfield site by replacing outdated retail units with a residential-led scheme is appropriate. This application, as updated, is being considered in accordance with the relevant policies in the development plan. The heritage tests in the National Planning Policy Framework have been given full regard, and the consultee comments have been weighed in the balance against the public benefits of the proposal. And whilst the scheme is deemed as having less than substantial harm on some heritage assets, the level of harm is decisively outweighed by the public benefits. There is a clear and compelling need to redefine the city centre, regenerating its purpose, growing its economic potential, and improving the city centre's offer. And this scheme has the potential to secure a multitude of social, environmental, and economic benefits. The benefits are outlined in your report and include the delivery of much-needed housing on a brownfield and highly sustainable site, economic growth through job creation, indirect and direct spending, an improved townscape, and knitting together the new communities of Nightingale Quarter and Castle Ward with the city centre. In determining this application, members should also be mindful that the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. Therefore, the National Planning Policy Framework dictates that proposals for housing should be approved unless there is a strong reason for refusal of the development to protect certain areas or assets, and any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. The benefits associated with the development are rehearsed within your report and are set out on page 134. These benefits must be weighed against the adverse impacts of the development, and there are no objections to the proposal at this stage, and all details will be properly assessed at the reserved matters stage. As your report states, given this is an outline scheme with all matters, as your report states, given this is an outline scheme with all details of the eventual development unknown at this stage, including the number of units to be built, we cannot understand the potential viability problems of the scheme. Therefore, the Section 106 agreement will secure policy-compliant contributions, which are all listed within your report. There will be a mechanism for the developer to submit a viability appraisal at the reserved matter stage, which has been a tested approach that we've taken forward with the Beckett-Well development. This outline application provides the basis to deliver a substantial range of benefits that would in this case outweigh the disbenefits and identified level of harm on heritage assets. The Council faces challenges to meet its housing targets, and the promotion and redevelopment of sites such as this provide much needed new homes in highly sustainable locations. The Nightingale Quarter has provided significant growth on the redundant brownfield site, and the emerging development on Friargate Goods Yard is a further example of the commercial confidence of the city. The cultural offer in the city centre will also be given a massive uplift this week with the opening of the Market Hall, and together with the Valent Arena, this offer for the city centre residents and visitors continues to flourish. As planners, we will continue to work proactively with developers to ensure that all opportunities are maximised for city centre growth and improvement. This outline application will be accompanied by a range of conditions to ensure that all reserved matter submissions deliver exacting standards of overall design to meet the wider government aspirations to achieve beautiful and well-designed places. The recommendation before you is to grant planning permission subject to a Section 106 agreement and the recommended conditions as updated and shared yesterday. And Chair, there are no speakers.
Thanks, Laura. Very comprehensive as usual on these big buildings. Committee, any comments, please? Councillor Bolt and Councillor Rawson, thank you.
Well, I think this is a very exciting scheme, and I think it's something we need in that part of the city, and I think would be absolutely silly to not welcome this with open arms. You know, we're here to regenerate the city, look at the economic prospects, bring in jobs, bring in housing. And I think, you know, you have to say that that site isn't the most prettiest as you enter or exit the city. I think it's a non-brainer. We need this in this part of the city. As Laura's outlined, we've got the Nightingale Quarter, Castle Ward, we've got the Friargate Goods Yard that's obviously got bulldozers on now. There's a lot happening in the city. We've had the opening of the Market Hall today, and I think we need to keep that momentum going. We need to bring Derby into one of the, you know, the top 20 cities in the country. I think that's aspirational, but we need to see that as a planning committee as well as a council. Yeah, it's a non-brainer. And of course, we've got the 478 homes as well that, you know, are there for people who need it. Yeah, I think we need to go ahead with this. When I heard today that the Secretary of State will not now be calling it in. That's another positive, and one that we've got to get on with. I think the sooner we start, the better. I clearly understand this is outlined with all matters reserved, and I'll be interested to see what the Section 106 agreement achieves when we get it back at a later date. But yeah, I'm fully behind this scheme, as I hope everybody is on this committee, to bring, Derby city centre in line with other cities in the country. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Sarah. Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, also fully welcome this application. It's a really good step forward, really, in terms of improving the aesthetics of that area. It's not great what's there at the moment, and I think this application will substantially improve it. I think the principle of residential-led use is good and sound in that location, very sustainable, from lots of access to public transport and so on. I'd actually support a mixed-use application as well when that comes through, if there's a bit more of a mix of retail or other leisure uses in there as well. I think that could work. The public green open spaces and the way it opens up the site is good as well. That looks a really nice amenity for the residents who potentially will live there. I did actually, would actually support the original application. I've got no issue with the height of the buildings. I think we perhaps need to challenge ourselves sometimes in accepting a higher density of application, particularly in the city centre. And there is sometimes a bit of a knee-jerk reaction and a tendency to water down some proposals sometimes, so I'd encourage the applicant and others to be bold in future, because it does help us deliver our housing numbers, and as a result it eases the pressure on greenfield sites around the city as well. So all to the good, Chair, and I'll be supporting this.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Chair. I do still have some concern over height, and I know it's something which a number of other people in the city have. And I think the height has to be mitigated by the quality of the design and the quality of the materials. And I think we need to, when we have a detailed plan come back, application come back, we really need to be mindful that the higher you go, the better the quality needs to be, because more people will see it. And that needs to be at the forefront of the developers when they put something to us. We've got a significant amount of this space is being given over to car parking. But when we've got a concentration of people as we have here, it may be a perfect location for us to be enthusing about car clubs and being able to get shared cars and probably a variety of cars, so you get a little one, or you can get a medium-sized one, or a big one, or a van, depending on what your need is. And to actually minimise the amount of car parking and building that into the offer for the people in that area. And I think we need an enthusiastic discussion about that, and I think we have a company that we're working with as a city on that again now. So it would be timely. Cycle parking is, again, building it in at one point in the ground floor may not feel secure enough, and this is, again, something that needs to be explored. I think that communities are much harder to develop when you're talking about high-rise buildings, but we've heard from several of the objectors today that we need to build communities and not just homes. So how we do that in high-rise, I'm not an expert, I've never lived in high-rise, but some are going to be more friendly than others. And my instinct of having been into high-rise buildings is to make sure that there is sufficient space, potentially on each floor, or maybe among a number of floors, where people can meet on neutral ground and have a conversation without feeling that they are imposing on each other's space and each other's front doors. So I think the layout is something that we need to be really alert to. Whether there's potential for having community spaces somewhere within the height of a building, I don't know, and I don't know how it would be used, but potentially a corner shop halfway up a block, or somewhere where there could be fast food so that people aren't having to travel up and down a building when somebody wants it delivered. And I think that comes to my final point, which is looking at the energy impact of buildings like this, both in terms of in operation, but also in construction. How do we minimise that? We know as a city we need to do more, and we need to work with the developers as to how we actually achieve that. And I'd love to see a good report back on how we build low energy, higher buildings and make them sustainable. So we need to do something in that area. I don't think it's making best use of city centre land, but what comes in terms of the final, I say final, but there might be more than one application for this site, I think is absolutely key. Thank you.
Ian, do you want to come back on any of those points?
Just a general comment, Chair, really, that we do now have in-house our own urban designer. For a good few years we didn't have one, so he's been a positive acquisition in terms of assessing schemes such as this, and we are also in the process of acquiring a 3D model, which will be hopefully beneficial for all concerned, that we can assess these things in much greater detail and have much greater clarity on things like views, impact on setting of heritage assets and those factors. So that'll be something that hopefully we'll get in the very near future and you'll be able to participate in, and we can bring it to meetings and run it for you. Thank you.
Great idea. Well done, Ian, and the team. Thank you very much. Any other comments? No. Do we move? You're moving, are you, Sarah, today? Anyone seconding? Mr. Councillor Rawson, thank you very much. All those in favour of the application? Eight for, any against? That is carried and that is approved, and that is the last one for the applications. So thank you very much for all those. We'll move on to item 9, potential site visits. Ian.
Snellsmore Lane, it's a variation of condition on the trigger point for the off-site highway mitigation. I don't think you'll be too interested in that. That's down at a reserve matters application down at Smart Park if you fancy a trip to a modern food production facility.
Very interesting, that is. Really is interesting.
It's a really complicated, it's a new road going in.
The northern access is obviously operational, and then
This is a new bridge over the river. It's already
there. No, it's there. Yeah. I can get you a visit if you want, Councillor Kerr. Yeah, I can explore for you. Yeah. As a general, yeah, we have been. It was some time ago. The project manager's changed, but I'll try and find somebody to arrange something. Yeah. A commercial proposal in a commercial location.
No.
No. This is one of Sarah John's, I think. Reserve matters? No. And this is a resubmission because what they've built is not in accordance with the approved plan, so they are resubmitting. Yeah, yeah. So we've got things to address. So the good thing is they're doing it properly and they've paid another fee for their application. So I was welcomed. But it's there, so if you want to go and look at it. But Yeah, we can keep you posted on progress of that. Aaron's dealing with it.
It's incomplete at the moment. Incomplete, so they've stopped build. It is at 9 stories, but yeah, stop building. Thank you, James.
That's it.
Lovely.
James.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much. Can I just point out a couple of things? We've had a couple of HMOs in tonight, and we had a very small, short training session from Mr. Clark earlier on that 4 of us attended. If you can get to the training things, it is beneficial to you, because you do realise then what you can allow through planning and what you can't allow through planning, and what's the assumptions. Again tonight was a lot of the applicants were making assumptions, a lot of the residents were making assumptions, and you can't just pass an application because of that. So I would encourage everybody to, if you can, turn up at any of the pre-planning training meetings. Mr. Clark would appreciate it as well, because he lays on a very nice buffet as well. So thank you very well. He had a banana anyway tonight. So yeah, but thank you very much for all the officers, for all the hard work you've put in for all this, for all these. Thank you, James, for our tech guy, and thank you, Stephen and Stephen. Thank you very much. Thanks everybody. Thanks committee. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's the